Your favor waits within the future. My dreams are small compared to yours. Why should I worry about tomorrow when I know that all I gotta do is trust you, Lord? And every little thing's gonna be alright. And every little thing's gonna be just fine. I wanna know your love, your love. I need more of you, less of me. I wanna know more of your heart. Make me who you want me to be. God, this is my path. Make me more aware of you. I wanna know you. I wanna know you, Jesus, Jesus. I need more of you, less of me.
Something exciting about a startup, right? Like we've all probably followed something that was like a crowd starter on the internet that we wanted to be a part of, or we saw it start and it built up. And I remember I used to work and live in Beaumont, and there was still is, it's called Charté. It's a French restaurant, like a Montreal French poutine and other bagel type food, really good food. And they started as like a crowd-funded thing, and that was like really cool to see them go from this idea on the internet to this like really popular restaurant that I think at one time won like Alberta's best new restaurant from some magazine, one of the plethora of ones that are out there. But there's something about that, right? Like we can all think of something or some company or some organization that we probably saw when it was really small, and then it grew to something bigger. We want to be a part of these things. And while some of them are great stories, I was looking into these and I found some absolute catastrophes that I wanted to share with you. In the 90s specifically, the 80s and 90s seemed to be just this world of ingenuity and entrepreneurialism and these different things that we could try and capitalize on and make these products that really ended up being horrific. So I don't have pictures of all of them, but I invite you to go on your phone and actually go to Google and you can image search this. The first one I want to mention was something called the Nintendo Glove. Now for gamers now, like you're on your PCs, you're on your consoles, like gaming was very different. This is like the NES days, like very, very primitive, but they came out, they're like, the future is now. They had this Nintendo Glove, it went on like up to here, and it had like buttons on it, you actually had to press like this, and it was kind of like early Nintendo Wii, like motion sensing. And I remember seeing commercials for this thing, and it was until one of my friends got it, and you go over and you're like, this is gonna be the best experience ever, like it can sense your motion. There was a boxing video game, but what it ended up being was like this horrible disaster. It didn't actually work. You'd have to be pressing buttons as you're moving, and there was this one boxing game and you'd just be like punching the TV, but only every fifth motion would work, so you're just sitting there flailing like crazy and nothing is actually happening and you're getting sweaty and tired and nothing worked. It failed and lost them millions of dollars. Microsoft Zune, I know it's a little primitive now, but the iPod was a game changer. The first like real powerful, useful MP3 player. But before that was something called the Microsoft Zune, and it was a colossal failure. It was just slow. It could only hold a handful of songs, where the iPod came in, it could hold thousands of songs. The playback was terrible, it was slow, and they lost millions of dollars on that one. And now we get to my two favorite ones. When I was a kid, every kid loves ketchup, right? Like fries for me are just a ketchup delivery system. And red ketchup, though, is so 1980s. So they decided to come out with purple ketchup because kids like ketchup. Let's make it zany and 90s and we'll make purple ketchup. I remember everyone wanted it. We would try and find ways to get to our friend's house for lunch. Hey, my mom's got the purple. Yo, you got some of that purple? Yeah, I'm coming over to your house for lunch. And we'd go over there, and like it didn't taste any different, but there was something psychological about putting purple spread on your sandwich. And you're just like, this is so crazy. Oh, this is so great. Yeah, it's awesome. And you're like, this is weird. It didn't taste bad, but it was a bad experience. And it lost them tons of money. But my favorite failure in the 90s is actually another video game, and it's called The Virtual Boy. So listen, I want to actually show you The Virtual Boy. This was like an early primitive VR experience. VR is really starting to catch on now, but it's actually like goggles you put. Let's just take a look at the video.
It came from the third dimension with its own brain, its own voice, its own legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes. The Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
Cutting edge stuff, right? Something about the Virtual Boy is that it actually only came out, like you lost all of your color from it. It was just red and black. And like, it was harsh red, and I remember reading that there was like, I don't know if kids went blind, but I know they lost some of their vision because it was just flashing red all the time. And like, it was a horrible experience. And like, as you can imagine, VR and like motion tracking in the 90s was not great. So this thing was beyond a failure, and it didn't catch on, and it lost millions of dollars for Nintendo. Now, Nintendo seems to be doing okay, so we're not going to cry any tears for them, but that was an absolute flop. But there's something about these ideas. I know that some of my friends would come to school, and they'd be like, man, like I got the Virtual Boy, or purple ketchup, or all these dumb things that we really cared about. But we kind of identified with them, right? We wanted to be a part of it. We wanted to see them win. There's something about getting in with a movement or a product at the grassroots level that just is a part of the human experience. We want to be a part of that. We want to see something grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're along for the ride. We're a part of it. We're on that team. And let's be honest. Is this you? No? Not you? You don't think so? Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard yourself say these words? This band is really great, but probably never heard of them. I first saw them at a basement show in a Nordic country, or in Iceland. But, it's just me. No one knows. They're this weird folk band. You wouldn't get it. And then next thing you know, they're on the internet, they're on YouTube, they're trending on Spotify, and there's 75,000 people at a concert screaming for them. You're like, yeah, man, no. They sold out. It's not about the art anymore. They're not any good. Like, man, they used to make art, now they suck because they're just like, I used to like them when they were, like, their old stuff is great, but this stuff is trash. We want to be a part of it. There's something about that gets us excited that we could be a part of that. We see them rise from this nobody band that no one's heard of to become famous, but then we kind of disconnect, right? Because we want to be kind of the early adopters of that. It's not cool anymore. But that rise to fame, that ride that you're a part of, to see this group, this band, this product, this whatever it is, this movement, to be a part of something substantial is something that's very, very true and very much a part of who we are as people. We want to feel special. We want to be a part of it. We feel like we are on that team, even if we're just functionally along for the ride, spectators. Have you ever been there? What's that thing that you've wanted to be a part of? What's that item, that product, that movement that you've kind of become a part of, that you identify with, that has been important to you because of that? We're part of the success. As humans, we want to be parts of challenges. We're naturally hill climbers. We want to conquer these challenges. And we want to, at the end of the day, do things that matter. It really comes down to one thing, and it's this thing that has driven us through generations, and we've kind of addressed it differently through different generations, through different trends, through different situations in time. It's looked different, but there's one thing that really has driven us through human existence, through basically all of existence, and that's this: to live a life that matters. To live a life that actually means something. There's only one thing that people fear more than death itself, and that's public speaking. Personally, I'm good with public speaking. Rather not die. But actually, statistically, people are more scared of public speaking than death. But you know what scares me more than anything? That at the end of my life, I would look back on the life I lived as my time is slipping through my fingers, like trying to hold on to a fistful of sand as my youth slips away, and think, I wasted it all. I accomplished nothing. My time on this earth didn't do anything. And listen, there's billions and billions of people on earth right now. And we all get this kind of blip in the expanse of space-time, in the expanse of the world, and all of these lived experiences across the globe. We get 50, 60, 70, maybe 100 years if we're lucky, to make a difference, to do something of substance, To actually be remembered historically, you have to do something pretty spectacular. Think about how many people actually make it into the history books, and think about how many people over the next 80 years of your life or 60 years of your life will actually exist and do things. We have to do quite a bit. You have to do something super substantial. We only get so much time. And I know that I'm 32, and I'm just starting to recognize this, but I know in my 20s, you don't really think about it all that much because you haven't lived that long. You've lived long enough to experience some stuff, but the perspective, we're not there yet into the shortness of life. In so many ways, it feels super long, but when you actually look at the amount of time you get, you don't have that much time. And I'm not saying this to be depressing. I'm just putting the truth out there. We have limited time on this planet. Everyone does. Doesn't matter how many vitamins you take or how much you do CrossFit, you're going to die one day. It's going to happen. What will you do with that time? What are you going to do to make sure that you live a life that matters? Because here's the problem. We could go into a mundane life. That's my greatest fear, is a mundane life that really just falls into the trap of our culture today. The idea that we would just go to school and get a degree, that we would go get a good job, that we'd make money, go on a few trips, do some good stuff, save cash, retire, maybe travel a little more, downsize from our dream home back into like a duplex, and then we get old and we die. And listen, there is nothing wrong with saving for retirement. There's nothing wrong with getting a degree. I encourage you that if you want to go to school, save money, be smart with your finances, see the world. I would say as much as you can, do those things. But in the grand scheme of things, that won't move the needle for purpose in your life. If your end goal is to save as much money as you can, if your end goal is just to live for that retirement home or that once a year timeshare in Hawaii or Florida or whatever it is, if that is the goal, that's the target for your existence, it will leave you deeply empty. Because it just isn't enough. It's not living a life that matters. That's falling into the trap of our society. What it comes down to is I have one thing that I want to challenge you tonight with, and that's to not waste your one and only life. And that is what we are here seeking, I think, all of us. Every human, we look for it in different ways. We're looking for ways to feel purpose, to find purpose, and to not waste our life. So this last month here, the last month of summer, August is halfway done, people. I know it's crazy, I don't want to remind you of that, but it is a fact. We're going through a series that we called That's What He Said, and it's going through what's called the parables of Jesus. And parables are stories that Jesus told. These are his literal words that he would not put like literal historical stories of real people, but he would give us metaphorical stories to actually kind of make us think. I love that about Jesus, that Jesus didn't just like always get up there. There was times where he just said it like it was, and that's one of the awesome things about Jesus, but he also just wanted us to think. He knows that God gave us a brain and we're supposed to use it, right? And so if we can understand the story, if we can kind of process this stuff through different mediums, we will own it. So this is what these parables are. Different metaphorical stories that will actually impact our life, that will actually change the way we see the world and should impact our hearts and then through that our behavior. So this week we're going to look through one called the parable of the mustard seed, and it's found in a book called Matthew in chapter 13, and this is verses 31 and 32, and it says this: "Here is another illustration Jesus used. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed planted in a field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but it becomes the largest of garden plants. It grows into a tree, and birds come and make nests in its branches." And at the root of this story, you're like, great, Jesus, thanks. Seeds turn into plants, right? There's not really anything that seems that substantial in this story. But when we look at the greater narrative and then the historical things that happened after, there's something to this story that's incredible. You see, it's not just a story of a literal seed, a little microscopic, barely able to see seed. A mustard seed, incredibly small. And it does grow into a giant plant. But this is more than just that literal tale of gardening. Jesus isn't giving us gardening tips. He's actually foreshadowing something that is about to happen. The story of the church, of the movement of Christianity, is being foreshadowed here. The mustard seed foreshadows how big the church would eventually grow. And the church, if you didn't know this and you've never been around church, may not know that everything that's come out of Christianity throughout the entire world, this space here, every person that would call themselves a follower of Jesus here, it started with 12 young adults. And they weren't like they weren't like doctoral students. They weren't in med school. These were like pretty average people, like fishermen, like literally laborers. There was a tax collector. He was basically a thief who just got called to follow Jesus. Average, uneducated, less than impeccable people were asked to follow Jesus. 12 of them, they went with him everywhere. And out of that movement grew what has now become something around 2.5 billion people globally, a movement that has just changed the world in so many ways and continues to. 2.5 billion people globally would say that they are followers of Jesus. That is exponential growth through 2,000 years. That's massive. So if you're here tonight and you call yourself a follower of Jesus, you need to know this: you're a part of something significant. Something that grew from very small to very big, to just minor in the amount of people, to the impact that it has globally is insane. There are millions and millions of Christians through Africa, through China, through all of Southeast Asia. I've been to churches in Southeast Asia, and they're all over the place. And it's not just happening here in North America, and we can kind of look, because we live here and it's all we see, that this is kind of what the church is. But there are expressions of Jesus and a Jesus-based life all over the world, thriving and growing, and the message of Jesus is reaching the expanses of the globe and is changing lives everywhere it goes, and you're a part of that. 2.5 and growing. And the reason it grows is not just because of branding, because of a media campaign or something like that, or because we've changed the product or we make it cooler or give it a facelift. It's because it actually changes the world. And I think that that is what we look for. In fact, I know that's what we're looking for in our lives today. We're looking to make that difference. We're looking to live a life worth living, and we want to change the world around us. And that's leading in our culture, and we've talked about this before, to all sorts of political and ideological divisions. We're at each other's throats, even within Christian circles, for sure within Twitter. That's no surprise to anybody. People are at each other's throats all the time, and we're trying to fight these wars to make the world better. We're trying to change the world, but we're kind of turning against each other. And no matter what you think about the other side, the ideas that are opposite to what you hold true, whether it's politically or ideologically, whatever that is, I want you to know this and to think about this. And this is hard for me because I have opinions. It's not my job to come up here and tell you political opinions or drive you towards any sort of political ideologies, but I will say this: not everybody who thinks differently than you is intentionally evil. Even some of the craziest ideas out there, craziest movements that I disagree with, you have to think they're not intentionally being bad. They're actually seeking after purpose. They're seeking after what they think is going to be that thing that fulfills them. It doesn't make it right, but they're seeking after that, and we can see that all through history. But the problem with seeking after these, what your social circle believes is just in the moment, seeking after whatever the ideology you believe in today matters, is that those things will fade away. Those things will change. Those things will be fluid and moving and not look the same next week that they did today. And the marker is always moving. And that's what makes it so difficult and so exhausting to try and find truth and try to find justice. And that's really, I think, what this society right now is fixated on. And in so many ways that's important and necessary, because we look at the world around us and we see injustice. We see injustice everywhere. But here's the issue. If you take two random people in any room and you ask them what injustice is, it might look a little different. We socially construct what justice looks like. We socially construct into our perspective, our lived experience, what justice looks like. And that's why I kind of stay away from the term social justice. We'll still use it because I don't think we need to get into word games. I think we all know what we're talking about. But the problem with social justice is that it's socially malleable. From one situation to the next, from one week to the next, it can be changed, it can be leveraged, it can be used for personal gain. And that is a bit of a problem. It creates trust. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't seek justice. Because actually, when we look at what is true, and what I know in my experience to be true, is that Jesus gives us a concrete answer to all situations. And if you're looking for an alleviation and an eradication of injustice, you need to look to Jesus. In his most famous sermon, it's called the Sermon on the Mount, what's also known as the Beatitudes, he says this, and it's found in the book of Matthew, which is one of the four Gospels, in chapter 5, and these are verses 3 to 12, it says this, and these are Jesus' words: God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. Sounds like a guy who cares about some pretty important things. We see also in one of the New Testament books, which is the first half of the Bible before Jesus was born, in the book of Proverbs, also known as a book of wisdom literature, a book of wisdom, it says this: he who oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. You can't tell me that Jesus doesn't care about injustice. There's not one topic that's talked about in the Bible more than helping the needy, helping the poor. Just like situational topics, you pick apart, that's the number one topic that happens in there. Jesus cares about it. But that's injustice, not social justice. Because we see this thing happening where people, like I said, can leverage that. There's not some firm statement there. And as society shifts and moves and changes and evolves, and in 20 years what that looks like will be different than what you are thinking it is today. You know what won't change? Jesus. Jesus doesn't change. Jesus isn't malleable. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Jesus and his values of changing the world for the best of humanity, for the best of your experience, for the best of your heart will never change. And honestly, that is why I find Jesus to be worth following. Because he's not going to change on me. He's not going to manipulate the situation. He's not going to change the verbiage. He's not playing games. He is always true and always just and always a good example and the best example of how we can live our lives. If we will let Jesus into our heart and radically transform our hearts, it's going to change our behavior, which is going to change our family relationships, our friendships, the world around us, how we vote, the things that we care about. Those will all come through Jesus changing our hearts. Ideologies will come, they'll go, you'll learn, and that doesn't mean that you don't have things in those that you might believe in that Jesus might land on situationally or individually at times. It doesn't mean that every ideology is bad. It doesn't mean that you're wrong in what you value right now. But what I'm telling you is this: there is no political ideology, there is no system change, there is nothing like that that will actually solve all the problems in the world. What changes the world is more and more people knowing Jesus, having their heart changed by Jesus, and having Jesus change the way they see the world. If we were all like Jesus and acted like Jesus and saw the world through Jesus' eyes, we wouldn't see these problems that we need to eradicate and that are very real. Jesus is the answer. He doesn't change. He doesn't change the game, and he's not scared to say it like it is. That was the greatest thing about Jesus. He walked through a culture that was very legalistic and just wouldn't listen to anything that was just like trying to be controlling. The religious people at the time were very, very manipulative, and he would stand up and he would say what is true, and he would say it no matter what. Now, he did say it with love. Jesus always cared about people. And just because we have the truth or just because we're right, that doesn't mean that we get to be a jerk about it. And I don't always see this, and I understand it in my heart because there's times where I get upset with stuff and I want to act out or speak out, or you get frustrated and you want to dunk on somebody or you want to tweet. Just don't tweet. It's never a good answer to anything. Like, social media is never the place to air our differences or really say anything. Let's start phoning people again. Actually, phoning is terrifying. I don't like it, but that's beside the point. It comes down to this. The world needs Jesus. I look at war. Jesus is the answer to that. I look at the political division in our world. Jesus is the answer to that. I look at inequality. I look at injustice. Jesus is the answer to that. But we need to recognize that we don't get to make Jesus a part of our ideology. We don't get to manipulate Jesus into what we want him to be. Jesus isn't changing all the time to fit the mold of what we want Jesus to look like. That is not Jesus. But Jesus is God who cares deeply about you, who cares deeply about your heart, cares deeply about the world you're in, and that there is nothing that will bring you to a life worth living more than following Jesus. That is the answer. And there's a journey to figuring out what that looks like for you, but that is the answer. And know this, a life worth living is exciting. It's not just coming to the project on a Sunday night. It's not just doing good things in the community. It's not that alone. It's actually doing what Jesus has called you to. It's having dreams that God gives you and actually acting out on it. Know this, and this is important. The other part of this parable that I believe is so valuable is that clearly there's a payoff to our faith. The smallest idea, the smallest dream, the smallest thing that God calls us to can grow to be exponential, can grow as big as from a mustard seed to the biggest tree in the garden because we had faith to follow Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean that we just follow our own ideas. Listen, self-confidence is often seen as the most important thing, believing in yourself you can do anything. I believed in myself about some really dumb things before. I was pretty confident, but I wasn't right. Wasn't realistic because it was me. Wasn't Jesus. I thought I was going to be an NHL hockey player. I am not built like a hockey player. It's not going to happen. And there's things that we put in front of us that become an idol that we're going to go for that. But I'll tell you this. If you have a dream that God gives you, if you hear from Jesus and he says, and the Holy Spirit speaks to you and says, this is what you're called to do, this is the world-changing thing, this is the nonprofit you need to start or start volunteering with, or this is the cause, this is what you need to do, it doesn't matter how crazy it is, there is a way that Jesus will make to achieve it. It doesn't matter if it happened when you were a little kid, it doesn't matter if it happened tonight, you can achieve it. But it comes down to faith. The Bible shows us time and time again there is a direct correlation between our faith and our success. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be difficult, it might not be scary, but there is a correlation between our following Jesus through faith, following what the Holy Spirit drives us to, and actually achieving what we're called to do. So 2 questions for you tonight before the band leads us through a couple more songs. What is the dream in your heart that you need to follow, the thing that God is either calling to you right now, and maybe you've never experienced that before, but Jesus will speak to you. Not necessarily audibly, but just in your heart. Jesus will speak to you through the Holy Spirit and give you an idea. You'll know what he's calling you towards. Maybe it's something you've turned down, you've been running from your whole life, or maybe it's something you hear in the next few minutes that Jesus is calling you to do something of impact, to live a life worth living. But it comes from God. And maybe you're just ready for the first time to actually start on this journey, to be a part of this thing that started with 12 young adults, that went on to change the whole world, that went on to be 2.5 billion people. And I got news for you, that's not just for the early adopters 2,000 years ago. We're just getting started. The movement is as alive today as it ever was, and it's changing the world as much as it ever was. And there's an invitation right now to you Jesus extends that invitation to live a life worth living, to live a life that follows him, that accepts that he is God, that he died for you, that he loves you, and that relationship and forgiveness and eternal life comes through that relationship with Jesus. And if that's something that you would like to begin tonight, if that's something you'd even just like a little bit more information about, up on the screen, whether you're watching at home on a screen or whether you're here in person, you can connect to that link. And we'd love to get some information in your hand, or we'd just like to connect with you. You can come talk to one of us after. We have an information booth. If you have questions, we'd love to pray with you. We want to celebrate with you. The greatest decision you can ever make in your life is to follow Jesus. I can speak that from experience, and I know for you it will be the same. But we're not going to track you down if you don't want to. If you just have some questions, you want to get to know a little bit more about what a Jesus-based life is, you can also text in there. But for you tonight, what is your next? What is your next in following Jesus? What is your next in living a life worth living? What is your next in impacting the world in a real, positive, and never-changing way?
Do whatever you want to. You will never leave. Your love sustaining me. Before I even knew what love was, you brought me here to rest and given me space to breathe. So I'll stay still until it sinks in. I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful father. Breathe deep and know that loving Father, and that there's no love like yours that we could have ever experienced from anyone else. Thank you that you have a plan for each of us, and I pray that you would just help us to lean into what you have next for us and to lean in to you and to your love and your plan for our life.